Walker Talker. The Walker Talker. Walker Talker.
Welcome to the Walker Talker. Welcome to the Walker Talker. Welcome to the Walker Talker. Welcome to the Walker Talker. So let's get to talking.
Welcome to the Walker Talkers, and welcome to PanNerdia. I'm AA Ron.
I'm Pete.
And welcome back, guys, to the Walker Talkers, the Walking Dead review show, preview show, slash pregame show, where you guys can come hang out before the new episode each Sunday night and kind of get our thoughts on last week's episode as well as what we think is going to happen on tonight's new episode.
Well put. Pre-game indeed. Pre-gaming tonight, actually, before watching Rick Grimes' very last episode. We're talking about 8.5 seasons almost for Andy Lincoln.
Yeah.
And I've been watching old episodes lately, and, you know, my reactions have been very different, you know, watching lately versus all those old episodes. But all I could think is not one actor in my mind could pull off all the scenes from season 1 through 8 like Rick has.
Oh yeah, I mean, Andrew Lincoln was the perfect choice for him, and he delivers. He really does. I mean, it's gonna be a shame, but hey, this episode 4, he put on a great performance this episode, and I can't wait for tonight's episode. I think he'll do the same.
Yes.
And you know what? He actually had some help with a great performance, as well as Norman Reedus as Daryl. Those two had an interesting dynamic this episode, and well, I mean, I think that we have a cool opening scene to kind of start things off, including those two bozos themselves. So let's go ahead and start with this opening scene we have from last week's episode, guys. Oh shit! They're already starting to fall in, man. Clunk.
Look out! Oh, here come about how many? 12 walkers?
Oh yeah, they're just tumbling down too, and Daryl's just on the edge. Oh, there we go. Whoa. And it's just that perfect, like, old school, cringy feeling of like the walkers clawing at your feet as you're kind of climbing or hanging on.
You just felt that coming, and there was just a few little roots to hold on to. You knew walkers were going to end up falling in. Like, why not?
Right. I mean, it was a great scene, and it was. We wish we could show you guys some more, but ultimately, it was, like we said, it was a great scene. I think they used some special effects, but for the most part, all practical. I'm sure the hole wasn't that deep.
And just the dialogue between Daryl and Rick was so rich and thick, and it was probably their best scene together.
Yeah, it was. I mean, even before the whole Walker, dump one by one, Rick and Daryl had a really good conversation. Not only that, they kind of start off with a fight, an argument. They kind of hashed some things out, and then they realized they had to work together to get out because they knew what was ahead. And regardless if they didn't agree at the moment, still they knew they had to take action and get out of there. But they even had a really good last, well, what we presume is as their last scene together, and Daryl kind of wishing him to be safe. And we'll get to that as the episode goes on. But Pete, can we go ahead and throw out a little synopsis for the folks here?
Sure, we can do a synopsis real quick. Well, as Maggie sets her sights via crowbar delivery to Negan's skull, Rick is discovering Carol and the Kingdom folk are moving on. They're done with the bridge. The remaining saviors are out of the scenario. The bridge is not doable via Eugene's explanation, and more on that later. More Eugenisms, that is. Oceanside is now known by all, and eventually Rick as well, as the Savior Slayers, and as Michonne governs Alexandria, slays walkers by night, visits Negan twice in this episode, Rick and Daryl have their most riveting breakthrough scene in the sinkhole. This all leads to two herds, a scared horse, and exposed rebarb that, well, eventually skewers our hero.
Yeah, unfortunately, and again, we'll kind of get to it all, but at first I thought that was the way he went. Obviously, we saw otherwise based on our preview.
Right.
Late, we'll get to that later, but ultimately, I was like, meow, hello, and so at first I was a little that right. It's like Austin Powers. A little pissed if that was going to be his way to go and just right then and there. But he's got some more fight in him. But as far as the synopsis goes, I mean, a lot happened in a little amount of time, but not between a lot of different characters. There was like a couple different. There was Michonne.
You thought, oh, what's about to go down here with Maggie's trip down there? You don't really get to that, but there are somehow.
Yeah, you got Michonne and Negan. You have Rick and Daryl.
And Rick and Carol and Rick and Eugene. I mean,
then
there was a lot of send-offs.
There was, but in terms, so you're getting to send-offs. Yeah, in terms of send-offs, there were a lot. I mean,
yes.
Rick kind of had his nice little, station to station kind of departures with everybody, which was nice. But in terms of like just certain kind of characters and how they kind of built, like I was saying, Rick and Daryl's big moment.
Yes.
You had Carol and Mud, and pretty much Carol trying to keep the camps together, and then you had, Negan and Michonne. Oh, we can't even forget about what's his face, Gabriel and
and Jada / Ann. Yes.
Yeah, with the whole Walker.
We don't know the outcome of Maggie's arrival at Alexandria, like I said, but how it will conclude, we all have our hopes and dreams.
Right.
But the outcome of the bridge is a failure. I guess you can call that an outcome. We're done now, I guess, right? We're not going to have any more talk about the bridge after this, I don't think.
I mean, they got the rapids coming through. I mean, they're violent.
Wasn't
rapids.
The bridge most beneficial to the sanctuary anyway?
I can't remember exactly why it was so vital in terms of like what connection it was going to make easier.
It had to have been another way, just a longer way apparently.
I feel like if it was the sanctuary, that would have been a little too much effort for that connection.
Another outcome is the remaining saviors band together to weaponize themselves via raiding Carol and Jerry's group that was getting ready to leave camp. But there was no real outcome there. Like, it looks like Carol drew her gun down, but didn't she like kick him in the knee and stuff like that? I think she did. I think, like, at least she tried to, but then, like, it cuts from the scene and you don't know what happens.
Right, yeah, it did cut from the scene.
So we might find out tonight Carol's, like, got them all tied up or not, because they were about to. More came out of the woods, more saviors, and ready with weapons and stuff. And some had pistols, some didn't. Not only, I think, 3 or 4 people had pistols.
Yeah, only a few of them did. Hey, what's going on, Platinum Productions? Thanks for stopping by.
Welcome back.
I really love that third teaser trailer, by the way. I'm going to show Pete here after the show, because we usually have about a good hour before we end up actually sitting down and watching after we get done recording this. And it's awesome, man. Like, really, really good job. Like I said in the comments, you did a great job of kind of expressing every idea you had mentioned to me when we had talked, and hats off to you. It was really good stuff. But thanks for joining us again. We appreciate it.
I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. So yeah, as far as the outcomes goes, I mean, even then we have, of course, Rick, wanting to, be the essentially the beacon to lead the hordes away.
Pretty much. I mean, he those two hordes are interesting because earlier on, when Eugene is having his last words, little does he know, with Rick.
Right, right.
He basically has these 2 Shakespearean names for the 2 different hordes. He goes, there's a silver lining to this. The bridge is okay. Now, you can't salvage it. Even if you do, it's going to take forever. And even when you get to that point, it's not going to last the big picture, the bridge is no good.
Right.
But he goes, there's a silver lining in this. And part of it was these 2 hordes, and he named them after these 2 Shakespearean names. They like perfectly are going like, side to side, but separate from the bridge. Hence, those were the same 2 hordes when Rick was confronted with his horse there, and he had to figure out what to do. And Daryl's idea of saying, go lead them together across the bridge and dump them.
Yeah, let them wash out to sea. You know.
Yeah.
I think that would have been the best outcome. In my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, did you guys notice too the whole white horse, and that's the horse Rick's riding on? So symbolic. I'm pretty sure the first horse he was on was white, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, white. I'm pretty sure a white horse usually symbolizes moving on. You know what I'm saying?
Riding,
You're absolutely welcome, Platinum Productions.
Riding to the great
beyond. Yeah, it's like the white stallion to the clouds, and very interesting symbology there. But in terms of hordes, guys, so they got to work very decisively together to plan how to keep these hordes away, not only from their civilizations, but from combining and making super mega hordes. And as a civilization that lives, they're filming in Georgia, but in the East Coast DC area, for the most part, pretty flat. You know what I'm saying? Like, hordes are gonna be, it's gonna be hard to avoid them. I mean, they're gonna pretty much barrel through. So we want to ask you guys here with our Fans Choice 1, right? What you guys think would be the best kind of not only geographical location as well as a structure, a fortress of some sort. What would you think would be the best out of these options that we're about to give you to combat against mega hordes? So if you had a mega horde coming, or if you had some that you've been riling up or keeping track of or herding per se, and something happened and went awry and they were coming for you, what do you think would be the best option? And we're about to give them to you here.
Well, here's 3. Cave in the mountains. Castle. Could be medieval. Could be, something historical here in the U.S. And then, of course, fort on the ocean. These old forts that are abandoned next to their, landmarks, or even newer military forts. The smaller ones usually have walls up against where the ocean is splashing. So
it's kind of built into the.
But on the castle, on the other hand,
right.
you already have the walls. The amazing walls are your walls you live inside of, but they're also walls to keep.
Yeah.
Birds
In
out.
that case, though, you would be in a valley, so there would be some
in a
differences. I mean, though, whether or not that castle, and this is not talking about necessarily in the DC area. This is kind of in general, globally. Because it's got to be happening somewhere else on the globe, right? It's got pretty much everywhere on the globe.
Well, yes, it is. It's been confirmed in the Walking Dead world that it is, yes.
So if you're in somewhere in Europe,
Everywhere.
Scotland, Croatia, maybe way over in that part of Eastern Europe.
Castle in Germany would be on the side of a mountain. We're talking a castle that's vulnerable because it's in a valley.
Right, in a valley. So it's
But
somewhat
it's still,
vulnerable. But you still got fortified high walls, right? Maybe not. And as far as a cave goes in mountains, you got elevation there for sure.
You have the higher ground, yes.
But in terms of being in a cave and fortifying your goods or your loved ones protected in the cave, you don't really have anywhere to run too much further into the cave.
Unless there's a natural spring in the cave, and you can.
That would be great, and that would be
Then
even
you
something
could-
else to protect that you would have to make sure you keep something out of. So that's the thing with the cave; you wouldn't have much to run after you got to a certain point, right? And then with the fort by the ocean, which is nice because you have the ocean behind you, you have the land in front of you. It's just about how you manage not only the walkers washing up ashore, which we saw in Fear the Walking Dead, but by currents and tides, but as well as
on Oceanside,
as Oceanside as well, and as well as walkers that come from the land. How are you going to defend your ocean wall and perhaps divert the walkers to the water to drown? I don't really drown, but the wash away per se. So, what do you guys think out of those choices? Cave in the mountain, castle in a valley, or fort by the ocean? If you had one of those, what do you think would be the best in defensive strats against super hordes to protect your loved ones, your civilization, your society? And we have a friend here to help us answer that little question here. Let me just get him out here. Jackson, could you come out here and help us with something real quick? Oh. It's not what you guys think, okay? Jackson was just down there. He was on the ground, okay? Just don't worry about it. Jackson, what do you think? Do you have the answer for Fans Choice number 1? Let me just get. Don't embarrass me like that anymore, Jackson. Nope. You got to stay up here. No, we're not giving people any ideas, okay, Jackson? But Jackson says fans' choice for best defensive fortified structure against super hordes. Fort on the ocean.
Fort on the ocean front.
Yeah.
I myself agree that it's right up there with probably, I don't know, I like Cave in the Mountains just because higher ground, the walkers have to get up there, but I don't see many of them making it up there, so, but you would still have to leave the cave a lot and go on much more dangerous terrain to find what you need to find for farming or scavenging or whatever, so I guess Fort in the ocean, you can fish.
You can fish. That's good.
You could probably farm right there if it's fortified and you have a little patch of some good soil there.
Right. The walls are pretty protected. They're strong enough to protect against walkers. You know, they're not shooting cannonballs at you.
I don't know about how great it would be though to protect from people.
From people would be a different story. But hey, we actually guys super hordes.
Yes.
Unless there's people hiding
super
amongst.
horde right behind us, isn't there, Jackson?
Oh, unless there's people hiding amongst those super hordes, then that's a whole different recipe.
No.
Stop that. So, thank you guys for joining us with that fans' choice. We always have fun with that. That was our first one of the night. We'll have another one coming to you later. That one a little more general though, and we'll get to that here in a few. But as always with our reviews, we want to talk about the different character interactions in the episode, which we had mentioned with our outcomes and kind of what characters had certain dichotomies and other kind of dramatic bits, but also what characters might not have had as much impact with certain characters in certain moments. Perhaps their moment in the episode impacted something in the long run. So we'll go ahead and start discussing these characters next.
Well, the characters I like to speak about are Michonne, Maggie, a little bit of Eugene, Carol, and Gabriel. And, of course, Gabriel's kind of a blurb on there, and I could talk about him real quick, but can help out Jackson there. With Gabriel, he's more of a side note right now, but you don't know how important it's going to be. We just know in the previews that he lives through this experience, and he does. And he gets spared after forgiving Anne/Jadis during the Walker Art Munch time. But she instead knocks him out with some liquid chloroform stuff or something, and that's about it. We just know he rejoins Alexandria because of all these previews we see of him interviewing these Whisperers or whatever, or these spies or these new people that live in Alexandria. He's there, he's working all that. So Jadis might disappear for who knows how long.
Right, and going to wherever she's going.
We might not find out about this people trading group that she's in connection with for exactly. But Michonne, though, I'll just dive into that. It's so much Michonne. But the opening scene before even the show even started, it's Michonne's daily and nightly routine. She is a boss. She is the boss, man. And she has the sauce, I tell you. Heartbreaking family fun time in Alexandria with Judith, paired with Michonne, the warrior at night slaying walkers, the blade, and eventually a bat, which she realizes and freaks out and drops, and
right.
So it's such a symbol of all the things.
Some great canned dog food on it, dripping in the rain practically.
They do a great job.
I do have to say though, the whole scene with her living her daily life, kind of hanging with Judith, dealing with the ladies fighting over the garden, taking care of the daily stuff around Alexandria, protecting it, and then be sitting at the table doing something, and then the sword's just in the corner being like, hey, bitch, let's go cut some zombie heads off. Right. Let's do it. What are you doing?
And then you have this weird connection. Then you have this weird connection with her too because of Negan. He finally gets Michonne to visit him because he's on that hunger strike, and he brings up Carl. He brings up her first son, Andre. He brings up his own wife. He's trying to find out what's the button to press. He's
really trying.
And Michonne, she calls him out brilliantly, and she pretty much ends it with Lucille is just out there somewhere, and man, did that break him.
Oh yeah, and it was so weird because you almost thought he was somewhat in control the whole episode. Not entirely, but he seemed, oh man, for a guy who's been in prison this long, he's somewhat sane. I mean, to the point where he's being diabolical. He's trying to pull these emotional things out of Michonne. He's getting emotional himself, and he seems together enough to be trying to strategize this plan just mental attack.
He had to resort to saying, once you lose everyone you love like I have, you're afraid you're going to become me and equally or worse than me.
Right.
Which, of course, would never happen. But, like, he had to go finally, like, last-ditch effort.
He did. That was a little desperate throw there. And then we really got to see everything fall to the wayside once Lucille was mentioned.
He started headbutting the freaking cinder block wall, right?
Yeah, and I was wondering, there were some blood spots on the wall I saw before, and I was like, I wonder what are those from? He doesn't seem like he's too bad off.
Right.
Must be when he gets the yearning for Lucille. I'm starting to think he does more than just beat heads with that.
Well, let's move on to Maggie, because she's another queen bee, isn't she?
Yes.
But Maggie, though, as far as this episode's concerned, the episode continues with her. It's what I like to call the Bort of Glen, Baby Herschel, with Maggie just after her return from camp. You know, she finally gave up, just like everyone else did on that whole bridge camp thing. And Jesus sniffed out Maggie's purpose for packing for Alexandria, hence her crowbar choice. He found kind of interesting, but so he sent an alert out. But after Jerry gets the alert from Jesus, he delivers the message about Maggie to Rick, and Rick's like, well, is there anything else besides her going that direction? He goes, well, Jesus just said, well, you know what that means, and he's like, and that's all I got. Big Jerry, he's such a great character. But
Rick's like, okay, that's good. I feel you. And then of course Daryl's in the back, just kind of watching.
Yeah, once
slicing an apple.
Yeah. And once Daryl drove them off course, and they had a brotherly scuffle in the sinkhole with the 12 walkers later, the two came together to save each other, and these two saved each other quite a bit. But as far as Maggie's concerned, though, like, is it her fault that even happened? Is it Daryl's fault? Like a lot of things. That's another question for everyone that's watching right now. Is this it's Daryl's fault? Like Glenn, was it Daryl's fault that Glenn got his head bashed in? Or did Negan already premeditate exactly who he's going to bash the heads in? Because, Daryl kind of went lunged and all that, right? And then there was other things like, was it really Daryl's fault when he rammed through the sanctuary and blew the whole, plan to starve him out and everything?
I'm going to go ahead and say it was all Daryl's. I don't think 100% fault. I think Daryl was a gear or a cog in the events that were unfolding to lead to those moments, and he definitely helped with them all because he tends to be rash. But also to the point where I'll tell you this much, he's getting ballsy this season. And
we had a lot of dialogue in that sinkhole, and after Rick said, "Brother, take my hand," and all that, I'm like, this is their last scene together.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. I mean, that's the whole thing. They had their almost fallout to immediately kind of mend it and realize that they're always going to be there for each other.
I mean, they really disclosed all the tactics, the murdering, the dreams, all the love shared, and everything about letting go of Carl. Like, it was a in-depth scene until 12 walkers fell on their heads.
Right, until they started getting dumped on.
But I was like, stack the bodies
it's
up.
Raining walkers. That's scary. It's raining. So they it was an interesting scene. Needless to say, we loved it.
How about a little comedy relief? Shall I talk about Eugene, because he had his last Eugenism of the season, perhaps?
Perhaps. I mean, we might see some more, but in terms of real long explanatory ones that tend to always happen when he talks to Rick, yeah, let's go ahead and hear what he's got to say.
Sure. Well, Rick seems to have his last scene with Eugene on this episode as well. He's walking along with him, and they're talking about, they're walking through the camp, and they're talking about the bridge and everything, and Eugene's quoted, "I've gathered you've gandered the now rushing river over the bridge. It seems Mother Nature served us a serious bowl of whoop-ass in the form of an overnight deluge, effectively annihilating the upstream levee." This quote and Eugene's concern over what have to do with him maybe not doing more. Rick ends it there, and at that moment, and he's like, you're not a guy that just read some books. You made something. You got us here, and that was the last closest you can get to them having a moment together.
Right.
And
so Eugene was very choked up by it.
He was very choked up by that, and it just shows people like Eugene, they respect Rick so much that Rick was trying to carry on Carl's stuff, and Eugene and Carol, and now Daryl's going to be so affected by this. He as well will try to like carry on as much of Rick's dream as possible.
I think if anything, that's what's going to make Daryl want to carry on Carl's dream, which is what Rick was trying to get off. Because even that scene when they're in the hole and they're talking,
like,
Rick finally breaks down. He's like, Carl, and then
said Coral like 3 times or something.
Yeah, he's like, Coral. Yeah. And then Daryl's pretty much like, well, what about us, man? You don't think we want what we got to do too? We got to do what we got to do. And I don't remember the entire monologue, but or the dialogue between the two. But essentially, Daryl's getting to the point where it's like you have to let go of Coral. Yeah. You have to let go of Coral and move on, because ultimately, you can't have that, determine everybody's future. Not, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because whether or not Rick's kind of the de facto leader, just because his son wanted a certain thing doesn't mean that should dictate the rest of the future.
Well, he was trying to inspire Daryl to, like, before this episode, to like step up there and see what happens and make decisions out loud and all that. And you might try and surprise yourself. He said that to him during the whole like investigation of who killed Justin. But Carol's like kind of the in between conversation, because like Rick's pretty much said his goodbyes as far as we're concerned with Eugene, and he had a real big scene with goodbyes, so to speak, with Daryl in the pit there.
Right.
And the in between was Carol, and Rick's last scene with Carol, he says, "I don't know if we're doing the right thing here, but if anyone brings me hope for how things can turn out, it's you." And he tells Carol this, and that was basically his goodbye to her. But reading and watching other things about that scene, like, these are two actors that have been there since day one together,
right? And
those tears were like real.
Oh yeah,
and that goes to show how tough that actress Melissa McBride had to be to like choke back her tears as much as possible, because Andy Lincoln was just letting her rip, man. I mean, you really felt like that was a raw, real emotion about not just the characters, but the actors, the real people.
The real life flooded over. Yeah.
Done so much work together, and the meaning between their characters and their children, both hers and his, like that goes way back. I mean, the whole ride.
Yeah. I mean, everything. I mean, even to the point where, I was gonna say Rick beating her husband's ass, but that was Shane beating her husband's ass. Her, former husband, back in season 1. But yeah, man. The great scene, and it was cool how he kind of stopped through and said his goodbyes to the important people. Obviously, he didn't say goodbye to Maggie this episode, but what was his last interaction with Maggie? That was in Hilltop. He was holding Herschel, right?
Well, holy cow. I guess so. I guess
that was it.
It was last visit to Hilltop. But the thing is that they might still, we hope, the fans hope, that because the preview shows that probably he grabbed on to the horse, because the horse was freaked out by the two herds, and the horse came closer to him, and that's when he kind of grabbed on
and probably
pulled himself off the rebarb, and then because they show him riding and dripping and everything, right, on the horse.
Yeah, well, so maybe, but yeah, it shows him.
Maybe he gets either halfway there, becomes a walker, and walks the rest of the way there, or he gets there and Michonne and Maggie get to say their goodbye, and his death in front of them at the gates of Alexandria or something is like the ultimate, like, we have to work together. This moment right there changes everything. Right. Or not. I don't know. This is me dreaming over here.
Or it rips them apart, right.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, as we wrap up the characters here and talking about them, I think it brings us to a great point and something we always love to discuss. Our appreciations for the wonderful episode at hand. And Pete, why don't you go ahead and start us off with what you appreciated with this episode?
I will. Right off the bat, Michonne's night killings of walkers, I mean, it brought me back to not only her introduction to The Walking Dead, but it brought me back to, like, when she was up against the governor in Woodbury, and the walkers that she killed. Like, for instance, the scene where she discovers the governor's walkers that he keeps stowed away for the night shows, where he
Right.
has like the walkers chained and there's fighters in between. They pull all their teeth out so they can't bite. But Michonne discovers them and she slices and dices them all kinds of different angles and ways. And she does the same thing finally in this opening scene of episode 4, season 9. So that's my main appreciation, because if I go down the Rick and Daryl road, I think I'm going to just rant on so long. And after tonight's episode, Rick's last, I think I'm saving that for next week.
That's good. I like that. Well, let me bounce
Yeah.
one off you then. Speaking of Michonne, I appreciated the dialogue and dichotomy with Michonne and Negan. I really enjoyed that. It was a big chunk of the episode. I loved their conversations. I loved the kind of rigidness of it. I loved how they kind of went back and forth, and I loved how Negan ultimately came to the point that Michonne is essentially like him, and not completely, but their deep down motive and drive.
I'll tell you what,
Drive are the same.
she's a complete woman. She's a complete person.
Right.
The balance her day and night to keep that warrior intact, as well as this like governing person that like, you know, brings the peace between all, and you know, the fact that she has probably a law background like she does in the comic book, you know, all that, and then still calling Negan out in his shit. Like, yeah, he got in her, he pushed her buttons, but he didn't really get deep in her mind. You know,
Not too bad.
not
no.
as much as
Not enough.
I'm sure. Like Talking Dead, they're gonna rave about. Oh, you got in her mind real good. He got what he like. Whatever.
Right.
She got the last laugh because she's like, oh, the bat, like, it's somewhere out there.
Right. Yeah.
That broke him. That was
I love
nice.
that too, because yeah, him freaking out.
Now
was
that he's
great.
mentally broke, can we please torture him?
Yeah. No
Come
shit.
on.
Right. I'll tell you another appreciation, since Pete will talk about it more next week, and of course I will too. I will of course say I appreciated everything with Rick and Daryl this episode, from their downfall to their uprise and getting out.
Well
to even-
written conversation.
very well written, and it ended nice with how they kind of departed. But I will say one thing, or ask one thing: how'd the damn fucking hole get there?
Sinkhole.
Was it just a sinkhole?
Well, I mean, maybe if anyone did it, it could have been the Whispers or something.
That's what I'm
you know,
saying. Is
like a
it
new
that
enemy.
convenient? As
All
a
I know is
sinkhole?
it's none of the communities that we have been following
Right,
for
okay.
these few seasons
I'll
now.
go with that. Okay.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, it looked like a true, real. I just watch on the Science Channel on like outrageous acts of science and things like that or whatever. They showed sinkholes.
Sinkholes
And
happen, man.
They happen. They happen right outside this building we're sitting in. A matter of fact, there was
Oh
a
yeah, I remember that
sinkhole
one that
a
happened
couple
down
years
there.
ago.
Yeah,
Not
I remember
even
that. Yeah.
2017.
Car
I think.
fell in. Yeah.
Car parallel park spot. The whole car and then some. The
straight
street
down.
just fell in. Everything fell.
Shit's
So,
cray.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, all together, I think we both really appreciated this episode. I think it was a good build up to tonight's episode. But before we get into
Fans choice number 2.
tonight's episode, let's talk about fans choice number 2, which of course, whoops, I didn't turn off our appreciations. Which of course is always kind of your guys' turn to predict before we get into a preview and prediction segment. Who do you think's gonna go
Who's
in
next?
tonight's episode? Well, it's obvious that Rick's going in tonight's episode.
Rick's going, yeah. But anyone else?
Anybody else going? Anybody else going? Is this gonna be just
It-
all Rick
is
the whole episode?
There's going to be a wicked reaction to his death, and somebody goes ahead and tries to kill Negan and ends up killing someone else by accident. Or Michonne and Maggie, are they just going to have a face-off chit-chat about what to do with Negan?
Right.
And then Rick's dead body or dripping almost dead body shows up, and they have to deal with that. And then, you know, someone's going to snap after Rick dies.
Or instead of this, since we know Rick's dying, how about this? How many walkers is Rick gonna kill? Is Rick gonna kill any walkers? Is he gonna try taking out some? Is he just gonna lead them all? Is he gonna kill all?
Maybe
the whole horde?
he never goes back to Alexandria and he just gets on his horse and leads the walkers the way he
The
wanted
horde
to lead
into
them in
the
the first
sunset?
place. Right. And then so he ends up becoming a walker when they go searching for him out in the middle of nowhere.
And just
That would
finding him.
suck. I
King
like my
of-
version
He ends
better.
up being king of the walkers, and he's a
Yeah.
sentient walker. He can actually talk, and he's a true walker talker.
Yeah, this might just be a Rick goes, because like I remember when Carl went, they killed off Gavin, and you know no one really remembered that but it was funny because the way he
Oh, yeah,
died, but it
Gavin,
was
yeah,
also
getting
kind of sad because the kid
throat stabbed.
from behind throat stabbed by the kid.
Yeah. So,
Henry.
what do you guys think? Besides Rick dying, do you think another Who-Man is dying, or do you think it's just going to be all walkers? Do you think just a couple walkers will die or perish, or do you think the whole batch?
You think Rick will die, and they'll have the big CG cinematic, like as he's slipping in and out of death, in and out of like coma state, you know, on the rebar, but even on the horses, he might be like hallucinating, dreaming on there too. You think all that's going to be like 90% of the episode, and then at the end they just throw in like, okay, Rick's dead, we're all sad. No one knows it yet. Like they might, like Rick might die, but our main characters like Daryl and Maggie and Michonne might not know it till the following week's show.
All right.
And instead, they're going to go from the audience experience Rick's in and out of coma and then final death without any other characters knowing he's dead yet. And then they're going to end it with a little introduction of the Whispers. Hence that scene we keep seeing with Daryl and Rosita or someone in the mud.
Right, in the mud, right. Yeah, I'm curious. That's what's going to go down there.
Whisper. Where are they? Where did they go?
And you guys like how he was totally getting devoured by these, by the walker hands on his side there?
It's like they're grooming my beard.
So as we predict and ponder on tonight's episode, let's go ahead and preview what's going to happen tonight. So we'll go ahead and throw that up there for you guys real quick, and we'll see what's cracking with tonight's episode of The Walking Dead. Hold on.
Scoop some of this blood up.
There we go. All right.
Just a little bit more.
That's very, you know, there's gonna be a lot of flashbacks to scenes throughout his whole journey.
Feels like it's in.
From Georgia to talking to Shane. Apparently, this is gonna be the last performance of Scott Wilson tonight.
Yeah.
There's the bridge there, so he's obviously leading him over the bridge. And then there's him waking up, it looks like, in the hospital, and a big flock of those crows.
Yeah, the crows that are like overpopulating.
Which makes sense. I mean, if there's all that rotting meat and not all a bunch of humans, I mean, there'd probably be a lot more crows around, you know? So with that preview, and there's a lot kind of going on there, apparently it's going to be like the biggest like budgeted Walking Dead or something in terms of CGI maybe. I could just be pulling that out of my ass. I thought I read that somewhere over the week. But with, you know, all that, the show and what we kind of thought out. I mean, look, we know Rick's going, okay? But what conversations is he gonna have with the Shane apparition or kind of or thoughts that he's having, or what kind of last words will Herschel have for Rick as he's kind of fading away and hallucinating? What is gonna be the significance behind all these past flashbacks that Rick's gonna have? I mean, his life's flashing before his eyes. Even the future, perhaps, because it looked like he was standing over miles and miles of corpses. So, Pete, what do you have any predictions on any of that tonight?
Yeah, well, with the miles and miles of corpses, definitely just a dream coma kind of state thing because of the fact that, and we know that, but we see like bodies in there, including Jesus himself.
Yeah, I saw
the
that.
Character
right.
and stuff. So it's obviously like maybe him in some sort of self-purgatory, like looking at all of his sins, like, look, this is what's going to happen, you know, everyone's going to be, you know, a big pile of bodies dead anyway or whatever. I don't know. But I would have to say that I can predict this. He's not going to have a scene with Chandler Riggs in these.
No, which is weird.
That, and it's kind of like
right?
piss poor taste not to. Sorry.
All right. Well, I think that's something I want to get into a little bit in our final blast. But before we hit you with that, let me hit you guys with what I predict will happen in tonight's episode. I think Shane, when he talks to Shane, it'll ultimately kind of be a how do you put it? A tying of the knot, so to speak. It kind of puts the book on the shelf of their whole situation. The whole thing with Herschel, I think Herschel will, you know, his whole talk with Rick or Rick's kind of hallucination with Herschel will
probably going to be the best part.
It probably will be the best part. I will agree with that. It's definitely going to be something that's going to remind Rick that what he's done has perpetuated humanity into the future, and that he's not dying in vain, and that he needs to remember that what he did was great, and that he can die in peace. I think that's ultimately what Herschel's thing's going to be. And ultimately, I think it's going to be an all Rick episode. I think we'll pretty much see just him. If we see any other blips of anybody else, it'll probably be them wondering where Rick's at. But I think it'll
How
be an
about
all
this
Rick
for a
episode.
prediction?
Go for it.
Michonne finds out she's pregnant with baby
Oh, yeah.
Rick.
Carl too.
No, she'd name him Rick.
Ricardo.
Ricardo.
Rick and Carl. Ricarl. So, guys, what do you think's going to happen on tonight's episode? Besides the obvious.
Will
what do you think's gonna happen?
Rick become a walker before or after he sees or is seen by another main character? There's a question for you.
There you go. There's another one. We'll throw that into the fans' choice as well.
Dying Rick or Walker Rick? Who will anyone see Dying Rick before Walker Rick?
And, well, speaking of Rick, let's go ahead and wrap this show up with our final thoughts of the night, with the final blast, and with episode 5 right around the corner.
Blast.
We gotta kind of talk about some stuff. And well, Pete, you kind of brought up a good point to start off, kind of a heated point here. Can you go ahead and kind of elaborate on that again?
You mean like the send-off of Rick Grimes?
Yeah.
That?
Yes, sir.
Well, many of you probably already started watching the episode, but if you're still tuning back into us live in commercial breaks because they suck, I would have to say, first of all, welcome to PanNerdia, welcome to the Walker Talkers, and welcome to Pete and Aaron here, about to go through some a traumatizing hour of losing Rick. Because my final blast is, Rick goes, there's no show. This man has been quoted say that many a times. And
Right.
I really do feel like I just want to find out, after 16 episodes of season 9, who's left at that point. Like, in other words, if this was such a great idea, whether it was Andy himself saying, time's up, I gotta go,
Right.
or it was a combination of them, like, well, they made some mistakes. Maybe if they didn't kill Carl off, Andy Lincoln wouldn't have been like, time's up, let's go.
Yeah,
Because
I agree.
if he dies off and Carl's still there, maybe he would feel more comfortable with that. But that's my final blast. It has to be the fact that we're going to lose Rick, and we already know it, and I'm not comfortable yet. And I just want to know, like, okay, because you made this decision and he's gone, what's so great, and what's this big catapult besides the Whispers and maybe Commonwealth in the future? Like, who are the main characters? Daryl and Carol and Negan? Are they really going to set the Walking Dead world on fire? I mean, of course, they've been part of that.
Right.
But Rick without a Rickless world, it's impossible.
It's Dragon Ball without Goku. It's DC without Superman, essentially. I mean, obviously, people will argue the DC part. But what I'm getting at ultimately, what we're getting at is Rick's gone. It's kind of a lost cause for us. I mean, and ultimately, though they're going to try their hardest to do him right with this episode, there's things they're doing wrong with this episode. And what it's ultimately going to remind us is of the ultimate wrong-do, which is Carl leaving. And speaking of Carl, Rick's not going to have any flashbacks or talk to Carl this. Maybe he will, and they weren't shown in the previews. But from what we know, he's not going to be talking to Carl in these flashbacks. That's doing him wrong. That's probably because since they severed a tie with Carl so recently, they don't want to bring him back into the fray as a hired actor on the show to make this scene. Like Scott Wilson and so on and so forth have been away for a minute so they can have that scene. But with Channel Riggs, they're not gonna hire him back to do that scene, and it's disappointing because he was just he's been ranting on, he's been living this kind of moral high road season with the whole idea of living Carl's dream, and then he's not gonna have Carl be that significant factor to help kind of put his mind to rest as he is heading to the bone zone himself.
Maybe they'll have some audio, some Chandler Riggs voiceover stuff.
Maybe
that
they'll have something like
had
that
already, and they've
Right.
kind of chopped it together, or he maybe went a sound.
Anyway, they're dropping a ball there. I'll put
Yeah.
it that way. And ultimately, I mean, I can be sour about more things, but we'll see how they send him off here the proper way. Hopefully, we'll enjoy it either way. And hopefully you guys enjoyed us here on the Walker Talkers, the Walking Dead pre-game preview show held here every Sunday night before the new
Rebarb skewering of Rick and then dripping blood to death is not a send-off of Rick Grimes.
I still don't think it's a send-off.
They've got tonight's episode to rectify that. They've got that much. We'll
yeah,
see
because
what
like I
they
said
do.
at the beginning of this, I was really pissed if that was how he was going to die, just falling on a rebar like that. And then, like, okay, we saw in the preview he got up and he's kind of leading him away. So hopefully his sacrifice is not in vain. His sacrifice is epic, and something super epic happens at the end of this episode, the climax, to really kind of set it off. And so, quote unquote, catapult us into a new era of The Walking Dead. We'll see, guys. We'll see. And we'll see you guys here next week for the review of episode 5, season 9 of The Walking Dead. Rick Grimes, last episode.
Carl!
You guys have a great night.
Don't
Peace.
go, Rick! This is all a dream. They're all going to fool us, right? He's really not going to die?
Nope. He's gonna.